Hello and welcome back to Tell Me Your Ghost Story. I'm your host, Cassie Askin, and today we hear Mimi's story and Woody's story. First, we'll hear Mimi's story. When Mimi was a kid, she traveled to a quiet town in Mexico to visit her family and stayed in her aunt's home, a home heavy with grief after the loss of her cousin. She woke several times throughout the night to find her aunt praying in the moonlight, cloaked in a strange robe. When Mimi finally approached the figure, she realized the hooded entity was not her aunt at all. So without any further ado, let's hear Mimi's story. Hey Mimi, tell me your ghost story.
So this story goes back to when I was a kid. In this town of Mexico, it's a small town called Teocaltiche. So the town is infamous for old school, like the streets are at the time they were made out of cobblestone. It was very the houses were old school where you would have open patios, like you would have to walk across these patios in order to get to your bedrooms. So very antique, very earthy as best way I can describe it. But it also has a history because a lot of the old towns in Mexico, have a lot of history because they were back in the day where there was a lot of people that were colonized when during that episode there was a lot of people that died and a lot of things happened, so it's known that you can feel very spiritual in that area, right? So visiting came from the states and we were visiting our relatives out in Mexico, and I'm a very sensitive person. I pick up on a lot of things. Throughout my childhood I was always that way. So that day just happened to be that I was visiting, and a couple of my cousins that were going downtown, and they stopped me as I was headed back home. They stopped me and they took me off and I wanted to go let my mother know and they would not let me, right? So they took me, no, 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 let's just go. We're not going to be long. So they took me away for a little bit. I didn't get back till I think it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So you can imagine my mother, she was off the grid. She had the whole town looking for me and she was pissed. She was so pissed. So she was like on my ass, like, why did you do this? And my aunt stepped in and said, you know what? Let her just come and stay by my house. You're really upset. And I said, yes, I was so angry. I was like, I don't want to go home with this lady. So I made the mistake of going to go stay at my aunt's house. Okay. Now, my aunt, her history is really sad because my aunt had a son that was murdered by this man who was jealous of him. The story goes that my cousin started dating this one girl, and the man was infatuated with her. He was a grown man with a wife and all, and he was infatuated where he was really upset that he started dating her. So one day, my cousin was coming home, and it was him and his brother, his younger brother, and they were coming home. And he was young, he was in his early 20s, right? And they ran into him and he was drunk and out of his mind, and he decided that he was going to end him. He was shooting and hit my cousin directly in the chest. So it was a really terrible scene. It was a terrible crime scene. And in the small towns, people tend to like run and tell everybody everything quickly. So everyone ran over to my aunt's house, didn't even buffer it, just blurted it out that he was gone. So she lost it. She completely lost it. Her and her other daughters that he had were like literally on the street screaming. It was a really bad thing. During that time, my aunt never forgave this man. She absolutely hated him, like with the hate that she didn't want anything to happen to him. She wanted something to happen to one of his kids so that he could feel the pain because she never forgave him. Because my aunt was a tough cookie. She was a widower, she was really strong person, but she was also very bitter about everything that happened. And through the years, my aunt created this grief in her home that when you went to her house, you could feel it. It was like walking in this house and you could sense the grief. So my little ass decided I'm going to go spend the night with my aunt, right? And my aunt made us dinner, whatever. We went over, we went to the room. And I remember, it was old school. The rooms were like, the beds were like metal frame, right? And she had this one little set, like a chair, wooden chair with a little table where she sat to have her coffee, right? And we went to bed and she's like, hold on, I just got to say my prayers. So you have to understand in these towns they have like rosaries, right? They're very Catholic. So my aunt was like saying the rosary, which I had no idea how to do it. I must admit I didn't know. But I'm not going to join her because I don't know what I'm doing. So I went to bed, right? And I could hear her murmuring back and forth, right? And I said, "Oh my goodness, I wonder how long this takes." So if you know the rosary, you got to go around the circle, I guess. Anyway, I don't know it. So I could just hear her. And as the night grew deeper, I was like, man, when is she going to be done? And I didn't want to interrupt her. But at this point, I was like, okay, this is taking really long, right? So finally, like again, after the third time waking up and looking over, and I could see her praying, and she had like this hood over, like this, like a robe, I want to say. But I said, oh, Tia, like, how long is this going to take? And I sat up and I kind of just looked over at her. I could see like through the moonlight, like the moonlight would hit her, and I could see like half of her face. Her expression was cold. It wasn't like she was smiling or answering me in any way. It was a cold expression, like it almost made me feel like I was bothering her. Because she stopped the rosary and she stared at me, like dead at my face. I felt like, oops, I messed up. Like, I'm sorry. So I went to go lay down again. I'm like, I think she's gonna be mad at me. So I went to go lay down, and as I laid down, I looked over. Yeah, my aunt was sleeping right next to me. My body just shut down. I froze. I couldn't move even if I wanted to. I was like completely frozen by this. And I said, I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna stay here. I'm not gonna look back over there. There's no way. So I just laid there and I did not move. Like I didn't even move a finger. And I just stood up and I waited for the sun to come up. As soon as in Mexico, when the sun comes up, the roosters start goring. It's a big deal. You could hear the man with the el pan going by, right? So I was like, oh my God, thank God, here comes the sun. As soon as the sun came up, I jumped out of bed. I got my clothes on. I looked over and I saw the so-called rocking chair. It wasn't even a rocking chair, it was a regular chair. I could see her rocking the whole night, and it wasn't even a rocking chair, right? And then my aunt's like, where are you going? Do you want any breakfast? Nope, nope, I'm out. And I never went back. I never spent the night again. I was like, done. Ran home and apologized to my mommy, and that was it. And I really didn't even speak about it until later as an adult. It was rough because as an adult, I spoke about it, and my aunt said, I told another aunt, I said, this is what happened to me when she's like, oh my God, I also experienced something in that house. She heard like two people talking, and it was like a brother, like two brothers saying, I'm not gonna make it, I'm not gonna make it. No, carnal means brother. You're gonna be okay. We're gonna be so she's like, oh my God, someone's fighting out in front. And her husband, like they woke up and she's like, I'm not going out there. And it was right by the window. And she's like, no, no. It's like, look, like it's coming out, it's coming out. Just tell my mom I love her. I can't, I'm not gonna make it. You're gonna do this, you can do this. So when she went out in the morning, she minded her business. But when she went out in the morning, she thought, I'm gonna go out to a scene of a crime. And there was nothing. Nothing. So it wasn't just me. She too never spent the night. She's like, nope, never again. And it was really creepy because my aunt told me, well, your aunt kept your cousin's clothes, the one he died in a trunk in the back of the house. And she would pull it out and cry over it. So something came into that house from all of that pain. And, my aunt, when we would bring it up to her, she would get upset because she knew what she was doing was wrong. She knew what she was doing was wrong. And it happened like many years later, someone off that man's son, as a matter of fact. So then my aunt, believe it or not, she was happy. She was like, yes, finally. And we were like, how could you be happy about this? She's like, you don't understand what it's like to lose a child. But not until her dying breath, where she just could not die. She was like in very ill and she would not die. And the father told her, you have to forgive him or you're not gonna go. And that's when she forgave him and then she let go. Then she passed.
Next, we hear Woody's story. When Woody was in high school, a classmate casually claimed he could move objects with his mind. Woody didn't believe him until he witnessed telekinesis happen right before his eyes. So, without any further ado, let's hear Woody's story. Hey, Woody, tell me your telekinesis story.
Okay. Hi, Cassie. Thank you for having me. So, this story basically goes back. This would have been my junior year of high school. and I took an art class. I'm a musician, and since I was young, I wanted to be a visual artist, but never really felt like I had it in me. So, at the encouragement of a really close friend of mine, I took an art class and was fascinated with what I learned the short time I was in there. But one day I'm sitting in class, just minding my own business, drawing something, whatever, and I glance across the room, and there's this student who I wasn't friends with. I didn't know anything about him other than the fact he was a pretty talented artist. His drawing abilities were insane. And I want to say he was probably 15 at the time. For being 15 years old, he had an interesting perspective in terms of what his art was all about. The one particular piece of his that struck me was he had this drawing of a pregnant woman giving birth from her perspective. So I thought that was like so unique. It wasn't something that I would think your average 15-year-old would think of, like you're basically first person seeing like the legs stirred up, like, doctors and nurses around and, like a gown covering and so on and so forth. So I thought that was just like a really, really interesting piece of art. So he wasn't, your run of the mill, just typical high school student. One day I'm sitting in class, just we had these tables where maybe four people sat around a table and there was a handful of them in the class. And from across the room, I see him doing this with his hand.
Woody demonstrates what the student was doing. His index finger is extended while the other fingers are curled towards the palm in a typical pointing gesture, with the hand angled downward. He then moves the pointed hand in a circular motion repeatedly. Woody says the student's hand was 6 or more inches above the table, hovering over a pencil.
He's just like sitting there, like sitting at the desk. He's just twirling his hand around. And on the desk is a pencil and it's moving while he's moving his finger. And I just like out of the corner of my eye, I see him doing this. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right. What's going on here? So I like kind of look, like glance a little closer, and he just does it like in plain sight, like it's no big deal. Just any old day in class, twirling his hand around, moving a pencil. I thought for sure like there was a rubber band or a string or some logical reason as to why the pencil was moving while his hand was moving. I like just muster up the nerve to walk over to him, sit down next to him, and be like, "What are you doing?" And he kind of got shy and I don't want to say embarrassed, but he just kind of closed up a little bit. Like almost as if like, oops, like someone caught me doing something that I normally wouldn't let them see or something, like almost as if he got like secretive about it. And I just pressed the issue. I looked at his hand, I look at the pencil, I expect everything like no strings, no rubber bands, no fishing line, no nothing. So at this point I'm a little worked up because I'm confused and I don't really understand what's going on. I was just like super super curious and I was just totally convinced that it wasn't real. I'm like, how did you do it? Like you're playing a trick on me, like what's going on? And he just like I said, he kind of closed up and didn't want to share anything with me. I felt bad because I was just like kind of bugging him about it at this point. And he just up and tells me, he's like, I'm telekinetic. And I don't even know if I knew what the word meant at 16 years old. You know? I didn't read a ton of comic books, and I feel like maybe if I was like an X-Men freak or something that I would have understood. So I was like, wait, what? Repeat that? And he's like, I can move things with my mind. And just like so nonchalantly, like it wasn't a big deal. And I'm like, come on, like you're playing a prank on me. Like this is some kind of joke. Like this isn't possible. And he just ups and says, "Give me something." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Give me something, some tangible object. Like no tricks, just give me something." So I'm like, what do what do I give him? I didn't know what to do, and I had really long hair at the time, so I pulled the hair tie out of my ponytail, and I handed it to him. And I was like, "Here," like cocky, like, like, "Sure, like, what are you gonna show me?" So he sets the hair tie on the table, on the big drafting table or whatever, and he, like, moves his hand over it, like, so, like, no tricks, like, it's your hair tie that you gave to me, like, and just sets it on the table. He stands back a few feet and he does this little move, like something like with his hands as if he was like shooting like he was a video game character and was shooting a fireball or something. It was just so weird. He literally just like got his hands, put his fingers kind of together, and just does like a little like that. And I swear on my life that this hair tie went from being on the desk and flew across the room. At this point, I'm scared because I'm like, what did I start? I had never seen anything like that. I had never heard of anything like that, not even in like a movie up to that point or anything that I can remember. So at this point, I'm just like freaking out. I'm just like, how in the hell did you do that? And he was just very, like, really nonchalant about it. Just like, I told you I could, I could move things. So I've told the story so many times. And finally, I want to say maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, I started asking pretty much almost everyone I knew that I still contacted from high school, through social media, Instagram, Facebook. It's like you end up, after you leave high school, you end up reconnecting with people online or so on and so forth. So there was a lot of people to ask, and I've pretty much asked all my friends. I can't find this person's name. I can't find any record of his art. I I've looked through my yearbooks at like the art clubs and any kind of pictures that might have been in there. I've perused like every class of my book because I don't know if he was maybe a year younger than me or maybe of the same, year as me. I'm not really sure. But I dug for a while. Like I was really just like convinced like there's got to be someone that knows about this guy. And even my friends that were tied in with the art department, like TAs for the art teacher or whoever, like no one knows what I'm talking about when I ask about this guy. Like he even describe that drawing of his from the perspective of a woman giving birth. No one remembers anything. And I can't remember anyone else that was in my class that could have witnessed it. Like he is pretty much the only remarkable person from that class that I can remember anything about. And I've tried to think like, maybe there's some other type of explanation, but I can't think of anything. With the way like illusionists are and magic and stuff like that, there's usually some form of explanation for some of these things, but this in particular, like I've got no clue. Like I'm completely at a loss. I wish I could find him. Like I so wish I could find him. Or even just like find that teacher cuz I know my art teacher would know probably who I'm talking about, but I have not been able to find her on any social media anywhere. Like I've looked and looked. So, I mean, take into consideration this was probably 1997 or 96. So the documentation of stuff, it's just not there. My high school barely like had a website when I was in school. I was hoping that maybe I'd find like a piece of art somewhere or something associated with him or just I've done a ton of Google searches. I've described that drawing of his trying to find him. No luck. Like I think at the time I probably really felt he was trying to trick me or prank me or something. Now that I'm older, I definitely feel like it was real and that there's just no simple explanation of it other than he was telling the truth. I feel like there's so much in the world that's unexplained. The universe is so big. Like, how could there not be all kinds of things that we just don't know the answer to? It just seems like one of those phenomenons. I'll never forget it. And I can literally see it in my mind like it was yesterday. It had such a profound effect on me.
So, after hearing Woody's story, I went down a full blown telekinesis rabbit hole. I researched every way people can fake telekinesis, like ad nauseum. Most tricks rely on misdirection, like blowing on a pencil when no one's looking at your mouth so that it rolls away. Another popular trick relies on static electricity. You rub a straw on your shirt to build up an electric charge on it, then you use your hands to repel it while it's balanced on something like a water bottle. The ones involving string or fishing wire usually require attaching the line to your wrist or behind your ear, anchoring it to an object, and then using tension to pull it towards you. But none of the tricks even come close to explaining what Woody says he saw. I couldn't find a single magician's method that replicates anything like that, so I personally am stumped. If anyone out there is a magician or just has a theory, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much to Mimi and Woody for sharing their stories. Please show your support of the show by rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen. It really makes a difference. Find photos from the show on Instagram at tellmeyourghoststorypodcast and find me on TikTok at tellmeyourghoststorypod. If you have a true paranormal story you'd like to share, please email it to tellmeyourghoststorypodcast at gmail.com. Until next time, my friends, good night to all, and to all good night. Bye.